Hello everyone, this small video will be about Wagner, the German composer. He composed 15 operas, mainly. He composed some stuff for piano, but very little. He was a friend of Liszt. Liszt was a big admirer of Wagner, and I will show some of the transcription of Liszt and then part of his opera Tristan und Isolde. The interesting stuff with Wagner is he didn't have such an academic education like many composers like Mozart or Liszt and everything. He was mainly a self-made man, you can say today, or he was an autodidact, and still became one of the most important composers of the 19th century. And one of the most modern composers of the 19th century, who made harmony and music advanced. And after him you have Mahler and Strauss. Now Liszt also, they had the same way, so they both went to the future, so they were both looking for making the music evolve and the harmony, and they use a lot the chromatic modulations. So about his routine, I was reading that he lived in Zurich for a while, and actually he started his opera Tristan und Isolde in Riedberg Museum, that's the other side of the lake here. There is also a house there close by where he lived apparently too. So he lived in different places in Europe and in different hotels and houses and everywhere, because he was always going away because he has debt and because he had political problems. So he was a bit a strange guy, and actually even a mean guy, and I will not go into the Nazi topic, which I know is a big one with Wagner. So Wagner was an anti-Semite, so he had strong ideas against Jews, but that's not what I want to talk about today. That's one side that I kind of disagree, of course, but it's not what I want to discuss today. What I want to discuss is his music, and I think you should separate both. Liszt was his opinion too. He of course didn't agree with Wagner views, but he admired Wagner as a composer and as a musician. And I think this is what we want to talk about today, right? Because you can say whatever you want, his music is genius, is amazing. That's for sure. Everyone agree on this. His music is just exceptional, and he invented and innovated in many ways. So when he lived in Zurich for a while, he separated from his first wife, and actually, by the way, later he married or he was together with Liszt's daughter Cosima, who became Cosima Wagner, and then the children of Richard and Cosima Wagner actually are also the grandchildren of Liszt. Yeah, it's also descendants of Liszt. But today they're still the line is still going on. They still are called Wagner and still descendant of Liszt. I saw, by the way, an interview of a woman, one of the grandchildren of Wagner, who has long gray hair till here, looks a bit similar to Liszt, I must say, who talks about Liszt, her grandfather. So he left Zurich, where I live, and went to Venice, where he rented for 6-7 months a big room in a hotel. So that's also something he did a lot apparently, because after Zurich, after Venice, he went to Lucerne, where he lived in Schweizerhof, where he also rented expensive rooms. So that's also something typical Wagner. He always lived in expensive stuff. He always lived above his capacities. Now he had a lot of sponsors and people who financed him, like one of the kings of Germany, I forgot his name. He had a lot of admirers that supported him. Probably earned a lot of money too with his opera, because he must have sold the operas quite expensive, and he probably also got money from the productions and the concert when they played the operas. Liszt actually financed Wagner a lot too. He sent him very often money, and I was reading letters from Wagner to Liszt where Wagner is really a bit unpolite and nasty, asking Liszt for money. And Liszt always gave him money, always helped him, supported him. So as I said, Liszt did a lot of transcriptions. One of the famous is actually Tannhauser. a very difficult one. It's a long one. It's like a kind of a big transcription of Liszt, what made also Liszt famous. And yeah, I must insist on the fact that I know Wagner thanks to Liszt, and I think it was the case for many people actually, because Liszt also conducted a lot of the premieres of Wagner pieces. So Liszt was a superstar, Wagner was quite famous too, but Liszt as a superstar surely contributed to make Wagner even more famous. And the way Liszt died actually is quite interesting too, because Wagner created his festival in Bayreuth where Cosima was helping, and Cosima asked his father to come because she knows if Liszt was coming to the festival, it would attract a lot of people. Liszt came there, catch the cold in the train and died from it, and they didn't care for him when he was dead for a while. They tried even to keep it secret so that there was no scandal, and so the festival could continue. And there is a whole book about this actually from Alan Walker about Liszt's death and the whole theater around and the whole thing, horrible thing around. Shows how ugly people can be sometimes, or how interested people can be sometimes. But anyway, so Wagner's habit was quite simple as I could read. He was, I think, enjoying life a lot, but of course he was a big worker too, because writing an opera of 5 hours, it's a lot of work. He actually started his opera Tristan und Isolde in Zurich, and when he went to Venice, he kept working on the second part of the opera. And there he said he actually worked until 2 in the afternoon, so I don't know when he woke up. He actually wrote an autobiography worth reading maybe. Let me know if you know. Actually, I never read anything about Wagner. I know some small stuff, and I just read this habit stuff in this habit book. So he worked until 2, so I guess from the morning he was probably waking up relaxed and then working until 2, and then he went with a gondol to a restaurant, and then he went for a walk with a friend, and until the sun went down, then he went back home, I mean to the hotel, and sometimes there he kept working a bit, or sometimes the friend was coming over and they were chatting and everything. He did this every day, like for 7 months. This was his rhythm of work, and then he went back to Lucerne, and then he finished his Tristan und Isolde. So his Tristan und Isolde is one of the most interesting opera of Wagner for many reasons. One of the reasons be his famous Tristan chord. I have a transcription for piano here from Hans von Bülow, and actually Hans von Bülow, interesting fact too, is the first husband of Cosima Liszt, who married, I think she married Wagner later, so because she's called Wagner later. So Hans von Bülow was the first husband of Cosima, and she left Bülow for Wagner. Liszt was a bit against first, but then he accepted the fact. And Bülow actually was a huge fan of Wagner too, transcribing works of him, and he stayed a big fan after his wife left him. So, beginning of Tristan. So what happened here is you have this ouverture, this starting sixth, ending on a 7th chord here, which is no special 7th chord actually. The special thing about this chord and why it's called the Tristan chord, why it's so important, is the first chord you have, right? You have nothing, you have no tonality feeling here. But there could come this resolution in B major, right? But he's not resolving this chord. He's going to the next 7th chord. Not resolved either, right? We don't know which tonality is this. And then he's doing the same again, a bit higher. Still not resolving it. Then again a bit higher with a middle note. So he's keeping the same process, adding some notes, then a bit higher. Keeping the suspense with these 2 last notes. Again. And the real action starts here. very nice overture. I like it. So the whole thing about the whole game about this opera is there is no, you're always waiting for a resolution that doesn't come, so it's creating tension, and this tension is keeping on going on until actually the whole end of the opera, where you finally get this chord of B major you were waiting for. So B major chord coming after. Actually, Liszt made a small transcription of this piece too, called Isolde's Liebestod. So he's actually making transcription of the end of the opera with a small ouverture. So Liszt is starting this with this. The real action starts here. Practicing this one long time ago, I got obsessed by this piece, having this in my head all the time, practicing it. And the thing is, you get this tension always building up, and this is making very addictive. It's not resolving, so you're kind of waiting for it, and this is also lasting the whole piece, and then you have this kind of huge apotheose coming here. Explosive parts that again makes very addictive, and then, as I said, this ending. So the whole opera is having this non-resolution thing, and then you have it. And of course, the theme of the opera is also like this impossible love they have, and they solve this impossible love. They are not allowed to love each other, and it's only by dying together that they are actually reunited, which you have then transcribed in the music. So that's one of the things why Wagner is a genius, is his musical abilities. And then another thing is his theme. It's like, actually he has, once you start to know Wagner better, you will notice every ID or every character in the opera has a theme that you recognize, and then you can mix them, or you can do a part of the theme which could give you this ID. So as soon as we speak about Tristan, you will recognize his theme. I think I wrote it somewhere here. The Tristan theme. You have the hero theme, you have the love theme, you have the love potion theme, you have the death potion theme, you have the fate theme, you have Isolde's theme, which is this one. Ascending. Tristan theme is this. So every time this comes, then you have Tristan chord, then you have the longing, you have the desire theme, and all these stuff are mixing, and it's mixing the whole opera. Now the opera gets quite complex, so it's difficult to hear these themes if you're not used to it, but once you study the opera or know it almost by heart, or once you play the piece and know the piece from the inside, you notice all this stuff and makes it even more genius than only the music. Now, I must admit, Wagner operas, I struggle a bit to listen to them, not all of them. The beginning of Tristan is of course fine, but then the second part is getting a bit difficult. Tannhauser is an opera I could listen to completely. I listened once to the whole Ring. That's also fascinating to follow the story if you don't know it. It's very long, of course. But as I said, like, you need to get used to this language because it's very dense, and it's mostly screaming people in German. So for people who doesn't understand, it's very strange, and I didn't understand it some years ago. I still struggle to understand because when they sing it's difficult to get what I say. What I don't like is singer with a big vibrato, and what you mostly have in Wagner is singers with big vibrato, so that's a bit the problem I have with Wagner. But what I suggest is, if you don't know Wagner, is listen to the ouverture, like to the first part of his opera, where he's mostly condensing all the themes of the rest of the opera, and once you get used to this you can try to listen to a bit more. I know people who are huge fans of Wagner, who listen since years to Wagner, and mostly it's like this: you have people who don't like him because they have predefined ideas about the guy, and then you have people who are total fanatic of Wagner. And yeah, I think it's also a way why it's an interesting person, is because he's dividing people so much. Nietzsche actually was a good friend of Wagner too. They had because he shared some ideas with Wagner, and he became actually a bit disappointed after. Yeah, so this was more or less the habit of Wagner. It's not a big surprise, I think, and I think it was a guy who probably didn't have always the same habit, because he has a very chaotic life and always moving and living in different places. He lived in castles, he lived in hotels all the time, which must have been very expensive. There's this famous painting of Wagner staying here with Cosima on the left and Liszt on the right, and I don't know who is this. So I hope this video gave you some insights on Wagner, and yeah, as I said, it's a big topic. Like, I think you should separate the guy, the man who was a horrible and very disagreeable person, which I don't like the person at all, but his music is really interesting and can be really fascinating if you get into it. See you next video.